Hi, so this video we're going to discuss Jeremiah chapter 10 from the Bible, and it's titled God and Idols. So I read through this just now, and some things spoke to me, so I wanted to share some of my thoughts with you. There's a lot of focus in this section about the value for us of God versus the value that we place in material objects and what the text calls idols. And a lot of times you would see in the old days, if people had a lot of money, they would make idols. They would make statues out of gold. They would make representations of things that they could look to and give their attention to and focus on it. Now, I think that gold is probably a good example of what they would use to make idols because it has value. So, in theory, if you're making an idol out of something that has a lot of value, it means that you're going to work hard because you value this thing. And so you're going to go and you're going to praise that thing because that becomes the source of your resources by praising it and saying, I'm going to give this idol all of the value of my attention. Therefore, in theory, one would think if I do that, I'm going to get more of that thing because I'm praising it. So it's going to give uh, some of its energy back to me. So you would get more gold, which means that if you theoretically praised a gold idol, you would think, oh, I'm going to get more money by praising it. And what this text is saying is that praising a gold idol, I can read a bit of the different things that it explains. So it says, everyone is senseless and without knowledge. Every goldsmith is shamed by his idols. The images he makes are a fraud. They have no breath in them. So the goldsmith that's making these idols, the goldsmith is making things that shames him. His work is to produce things for people to praise, but these things are a fraud because they have no breath in them. So basically, people are sitting around praising inanimate objects and thinking that that's a good use of their time. They are worthless, objects of mockery. When their judgment comes, they will perish. So here's an interesting thing, because how would judgment day for a gold statue come? Well, you would have to see what it's really made of. And so when you think about an idol will have to stand the test of time, pressure, heat. God can stand all of those tests. So you can put your faith in God because God will stand up to all the tests. But gold can be melted. And then what is your idol? So if something has the possibility of not holding up to a day of judgment, and judgment could just mean that if somebody comes along and says your idol is not as strong as you think, and they can prove it, then they're right. And so where does your faith go? Now today, some people do still have gold statues. They make they make idols that you might associate with this stuff. But really today, what we have in the form of idols are still things that are made out of gold, but they're not statues. You wouldn't put them around your apartment necessarily and pray to them. What you have now is you have jewelry, you have money in a bank account, you have cars, and you see, let's say, a Ferrari on the street, and you think, oh, that has a lot of value. But if you ever talk to a person that actually owns the Ferrari and you ask them, how often do you really drive that? You realize that this is an idol. This car is not a functional tool that you actually need every day to do stuff with. This car is a display of value and brings attention. But let that car sit in traffic, and that car is just as useless as everything else. Let that car get a scratch on it, and all of a sudden, your hopes and your dreams, by putting the value in that thing, have gone away. Next part is coming destruction. Gather up your belongings to leave the land, you who live under siege. For this is what the Lord says. At this time I will hurl out those who live in this land. I will bring them distress on them so that they may be captured. Woe to me because of my injury. My wound is incurable. Yet I said to myself, this is my sickness and I must endure it. My tent is destroyed. All its ropes are snapped. My children are gone from me and are no more. No one is left now to pitch my tent or to set up my shelter. The shepherds are senseless and do not inquire of the Lord. They do not prosper, and their flock is scattered. Listen, the report is coming, a great commotion of the land of the north. It will make the towns of Judah desolate, a haunt of jackals. So it's a warning. Get ready, gather up your belongings to leave, because stuff is going to happen. And a lot of people will hear warnings like that in life. It may not be about destruction, like the Lord bringing destruction, but you will hear it from time to time. And I'm not talking about the news. I'm talking about when someone says to you that you're putting too much faith in your stuff. That's what they're talking about. Because it says, gather up your belongings to leave the land. And so if you have a situation in your life where, let's say there's a situation in the place that you live, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, this is not a safe place for me, or I want to leave here and I want to go live somewhere else. All of a sudden you see what's truly valuable. You see that as soon as there's a bigger threat, let's say of a war, or just even something as simple as like a neighbor moves in next door and you don't like them so much, and so you feel like, oh, now is a good time for me to leave. All of a sudden, all the things that you valued and you felt like you held dear, and you put so much faith and trust in, like how hard you worked to set things, you see, oh, this is not a good place for me to put my faith, because things can change like that, and this is just an external situation. And so after that, this is the prayer that Jeremiah says. Lord, I know that people's lives are not their own. It is not for them to direct their steps. Discipline me, Lord, but only in due measure, not in your anger, or you will reduce me to nothing. Pour out your wrath on the nations that do not acknowledge you, on the people who do not call on your name. For they have devoured Jacob, they have devoured him completely, and destroyed his homeland. So the interesting part about this, to me, is that he's saying that Jeremiah is saying to discipline me, Lord, but only in due measure, not in your anger, or you will reduce me to nothing. And so what he's asking for from the Lord, very interestingly, is discipline. Of all the things that us modern men need right now in a world of endless options at the tips of our fingers and resources that our ancestors could only have dreamed about, what we need now more than ever is we need discipline, because we have Uber Eats, we have Tinder, we have a train that could take us anywhere, a bus, we got cars, we got food on delivery, like from a supermarket. You don't even need to go grocery shopping. So you don't need to work hard in a field, and you don't need to transport yourself by walking, and you don't really even need to put in any energy to go outside to meet women. You need photos, and then you need to be able to text, and you need a place to meet. But it's not like how our ancestors needed to do all of the things that it took in order to live from day to day, and even stay like really strong to be able to handle all the things that nature requires. You don't need to be quote unquote strong now to be able to survive and thrive. You just need to intellectually be able to handle yourself on the internet, and you can have things taken care of for you by paying for them. And so what Jeremiah is asking for is discipline. He's saying, Lord, I know that people's lives are not their own. It's not for them to direct their steps. So he's basically saying, left up to the things that we feel like is important, we would choose to praise the idols because we think that is a good idea to care so much about getting money, because clearly it has value in the world. So of course it's very tempting to think that needs to be the place that we put all of our time and our energy to get. But he's saying here that he needs discipline from the Lord, because there could be coming destruction. And when there is coming destruction, the last thing that you need is to feel like you have all these belongings that you need to protect. If you gotta leave, the Mother Nature bring an earthquake, bring a tsunami, are you gonna be sitting around what? You're gonna be sitting around trying to fight the ocean water from coming into your $1 million house? No, you're gonna leave. You're gonna get up, you're gonna say, I invested all of this time and energy and all this money into this house that nature wiped away like that. So where am I really going to put my faith for the rest of my life? Shout out to Jason, my boy from college, that his whole room burned down because his air conditioner caught on fire. He lost every single material possession that he owned. And his attitude was it's stuff. And this dude is he's got one of the healthiest minds that I know, because he was able to literally look at this situation that he could have put the frame around that situation and said, oh, this was heartbreaking, this was tragic, I'll never recover from all this stuff. But he literally looked at it and he was like, oh well, it's stuff. And that's how we got to move now. We can't get attached to the things. You can't get attached to the fancy clothes. You can't get attached to the cars. You can't get attached to women. You can love them and you can feel something, but you can't get attached to the point of putting your faith, because even if you do and she never leaves you of her own choice, it's not a good idea to get attached to human beings like that, because you will have to say goodbye to them. The best case scenario is that you live long enough that you have to say goodbye to people. So it's not good to get attached in that way of feeling like I need someone in order to survive, emotionally. And you got to have some sort of foundation that can't be broken. And that's why the power of putting faith in God is unshakable, is because no matter what earthly thing can come, there is a security there that overrides anything that could happen here in this existence. It comes from the level beyond. And because it comes from the level beyond, nothing that happens here can touch that to reduce the value of that. And so that's where we can put our faith, is because that value always stays intact. And that's what Jeremiah is saying here. Notice that the title of this chapter is God and Idols. Not idols including God, but God and idols. Because there's a difference here. So that is Jeremiah chapter 10, God and Idols. And if you like this content, subscribe. We're going to keep breaking down more Bible verses and other interesting topics of conversation. All right, peace.